Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. Today, I want to talk about how focus is not optional, especially when we are a nonprofit leader. And I want to tell you a story. Imagine that there is a burning building in front of you, and in 3 separate rooms in this building, there's a person stuck under a burning log in each room. And you run in and you go to the first person, you get them a little unstuck, and then you run to the next room and you go to the next person and you get them a little unstuck, and then you run to the third room and you get that person unstuck partway, and then you run back to the first person and you get them a little more unstuck, and then you run to the second person. At this time, you're probably saying, Sarah, that is not how I would be doing it. I would be running into the first room, getting them completely unstuck, then running to the next person and saving them, and then running to the third person and hopefully saving them too. Because if I do it the first way, Sarah, I'm probably not going to save anybody and spend all my time running from room to room. But this is what so many nonprofit leaders are doing, is they are going from fire to fire, from challenge to challenge, partially solving it, and then moving on to the next thing. And their focus gets split, and they literally are spending their time running from room to room more than they're actually solving problems. And this is the cost of what we call context switching. This kind of visual came to me last week when I was talking with a new executive director who had inherited a challenging situation, and they were telling me, oh, I'm meeting with this department and dealing with this problem, and then I'm meeting with this other department and we're going to talk about what that problem is, and then I'm going to meet with this third department and we're going to be talking about that problem. And they were just focused on, this problem and that problem, but they weren't actually honing in on which problem they were going to solve pretty much at the core first. And that's when I had that visual of the person in the burning building just spending all their time running from room to room, because I know this situation for nonprofits so well. And I have seen leaders do this. And already I know that they're not going to make great progress until they really pick one problem to solve first. So I want to know, for those of you who are with me live, let me know if you've ever felt like that person running from room to room in the burning building, spending most of your time running and not able to fully fix any problem all at once, and then move on to the next. Let me know. And if you're just joining in, I'd love for you to say hi in the chat. Thanks, Eric. Hi, Joanne. Nice to see you. All All right. So we're talking about the importance of focus. And I just want to share a few tips with folks on how to think about focus and prioritization, and then we will move on to some Q&A. So hopefully my story is a visual that you can never unsee. And you're like, okay, I can see why really freeing one person in the burning room makes sense before moving on to the next person. But how do we actually do that in our nonprofits? So one of the things, and I learned this actually, I've been an executive director multiple times, but I learned this as a coach consultant, seeing, when you get to see many nonprofits, the pattern becomes clearer. You're not as stuck in just what's happening. And you start to see that you don't actually need to understand all the problems in order to prioritize and pick the one to start on. It's kind of a fallacy. And if you've had a consultant come in and be like, we need to do like this in-depth discovery, and been like, do we really need to spend all that time and money to like bring them up to speed on everything? And in my experience, that's not really necessary. There are a few key things that, if those are problems, they need to be the priority. And we don't need to know what all the other problems are. So, like, if you are on the verge of running out of money, or you have a bucket that's leaking, right? If you're in the red so much that you're going to run out of money, you need to fix your revenue and expense problem, your total amount of money, resources problem right away, because that's something that it fuels our organization. If you have a very dysfunctional team, maybe you inherited that team. I once worked with an executive director who had a team of 7. She hadn't hired a single one of them, and no other person had hired all of them. Like, they were each hired in different ways by different people with no clear process. And it was a mismatch. And about 80% of her team were not right to be on her team. They didn't have the right skills. They didn't have the right culture fit. Like, it was a mess. It doesn't make sense. You can try to push through with the wrong team, but it will be like walking upstream through a raging river, like working against you. So if you have serious team challenges, or maybe it's just that one person on the team who is making everybody else miserable, that's a problem you need to prioritize. Because so what I'm saying is, so a problem related to having enough resources to move forward with any great speed, and usually that's money, or a problem that is making moving forward like 10 times harder, and usually that's team. Those things need to prioritize. So if you have one of those two problems, and let me know in the chat if you feel like you have, just say like, that's me, or thumbs up if you have, or you have had one of those two problems. We don't need to keep searching through our organization for other problems, because those two, we know we can just short circuit the process and say, all right, now which one do you pick first, money or team? If you have both, that kind of depends on your exact situation. But if I'm going to say that probably, and here I'm just giving you the cheat sheet here to prioritizing, there is a good chance, this might be your situation, that the problem team member or team members are actually making bringing in enough money harder, and they're also costing money. So usually letting go of bad fit team members frees up resources to help solve the having funding problem, and makes moving forward with getting more funding easier. So it's often the people problem first, if you have bad fit team members, then the money problem second. Almost everything else can wait. What are those other things that you might think about prioritizing once you have the right people and enough funding? You might be thinking about, do we have the right programs? Are they making an impact? Are they making the biggest impact they could be? And we can think about, like, are they scalable? Can we do more of the same? Or could we make them more efficient, right? Maybe right now it costs, it takes 10 hours and $100,000 to save somebody's life. Maybe we could figure out how to save their life in 2 hours. Maybe it still costs $100,000, but I definitely spend 2 hours over 10 hours. Or maybe we get the cost to deliver our programs down because we figured out how to do it just as well or even better efficiently. So this is a valid problem, and it's a great problem to have. But don't focus on that problem if you have wrong fit team members or not enough money problems. I see a lot of organizations get into the not enough money problem because they were focused on their programs, and they grew their programs without growing their revenue and without having a plan to have enough money to support that program. And when I say it like that, it probably sounds obvious, but the feeling when you're inside the organization or you're inside the burning building is, of course, we need programs. We're a mission-driven organization. Like, that's what we're here for. But ultimately, that leads to kind of having an unsustainable, unsupported ship. So where else can we have problems? So we have our people are our primary resource. There are some other areas where we might need to tweak our resources so that we can move forward. You might have a technology or a physical space, right? If your physical space is really limiting how you move forward, it might be relevant to address that. If you have technology, right? I've seen too many nonprofits who are using like ancient computers, or I like to joke about the broken secondhand office chair. Those are things that should be addressed, but people first. We have the funding element, we have the program element, and then the one that is kind of the last to get attention, but is the most exciting to unlock if you kind of get through all the other levels of problem solving, is the future problem. And that's often a visionary type executive director. It's not always that person thinking about, what is our vision? What is our future? What's coming next? Always planning like 20 steps ahead of where everybody else is, building those key relationships. Too often, especially like in traditional strategic planning, we put visioning like let's first step, let's vision, right? And I like to say, like, if you're on an ocean in a little tiki raft, it does not matter where you're going. The only thing you need to worry about is getting on a bigger boat so that you aren't sinking at sea. But too often, I see the opposite. Organizations who are struggling with resources, focusing, prioritizing vision. We need to know where we're going. And I'm like, well, you don't have capacity to go anywhere, really. So let's fix your capacity problem. And then we can think about where you're going. So those are my tips for you today on how to really prioritize. And by prioritize, I mean pick one thing that is the priority, not priorities. I recently read that priority didn't have a plural until pretty recently, like maybe 100 years ago. Like, this is a singular word, and maybe we can bring that back, right? You get one priority. You completely address it, or address it to the point that it doesn't need your focus anymore before moving on. And I promise, I've seen it again and again, you will get unstuck and be mostly challenge-free so much faster than it feels like might be the case. It can turn on a dime. It's like getting unstuck from a parallel parking spot where you've been squished in too tight, right? You make these teeny moves, but if you make the teeny right moves, all of a sudden your last two moves are big, and then whoosh, you're off and running on the road. Thank you. I wish everybody all the best, and I will see you next week, hopefully.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.